Hey, what's up guys? I thought today I will take you along on my time-lapse journey and show you how to do a time-lapse. We are at Camel's Back Park in Boise, Idaho, and we're gonna take a hike all the way up there to capture the clouds. And also, yeah, wish us luck. We did leg day yesterday, so it's not gonna be a fun hike, but let's do it. Quads are burning a little. Water break before the last little step. Okay, we made it to the top. We've got a beautiful view of Camel's Back. I'm going to go over some settings with you and camera gear and stuff before we get started. The first things first, you need a good tripod or a sturdy tripod to take any kind of time lapse. I have previously in the past put my camera on a shoe or something to balance it on a rock. Obviously that's not ideal, so tripod, you need to get a tripod. This is the Zoomy tripod, and I've got the Vertec Photo head, so it's basically you can do fine adjustments. The next thing is your camera. Again, it doesn't matter what kind of camera you use. You can use an action cam, you can use a full frame camera, DSLR, a small digital camera, you can even use your phone. Whatever camera you have, as long as it's got the interval settings, or if not, you can use a intervalometer, which I'll show you a picture so you can get an idea of what it looks like. But for now, I'm using the Sony a7 IV with my Sigma 24-70 lens on it. It's a really good overall lens to shoot any kind of time lapse or anything really. It's very versatile and I've had it for years and I love it. This camera has got the interval settings built into it, so I don't have to use an intervalometer. The next thing you want to invest in is a ND filter. Not every single time lapse you do is going to need an ND filter, but if you're trying to create a like motion blur with traffic or people in the time lapse, using an ND filter is very important. Again, ND filters can be very expensive and getting a cheap option is good, but then it also has its flaws. This is a fairly cheap one. I got it off Amazon. I think it's like 40 bucks. The next other important note to keep on hand is cleaning gear. You need one of these. You need it, okay? These are essential. You need to buy these. Every camera or photographer, videographer has a cleaning kit in their bag. So this is also on Amazon, easy to clean. Just get all those dust bits off of your lens, and then you can use this to clean it a little bit more. I'll link all the things that I'm using in the description below. You can check it out if you want to. Okay, the other important piece of gear that you need is an SD card. I'm using the Lexar Professional 256 gig SD card. That's what it looks like. You want it to be a super fast reading SD card because you're taking hundreds of photos at a time and you want to be able to capture all of it without there being any buffering or issues. Maybe there's an error message while you're shooting your time lapse. So getting a good SD card is something I would invest in, and is not something I would cheap out on. I know, guys, shit's expensive, okay? Especially in the photography community, it's not easy to get started, but make sure all of your camera gear is fully charged. Your camera batteries are fully charged, okay? There's been times where I have woken up for sunrise, hiked up this hill, only to see that like one of my batteries has about 40% battery life and the rest are dead, and I've basically sitting in the cold trying to capture the sunrise, which was a complete fail. So always make sure your stuff is charged beforehand. Your SD cards are formatted. That's another important one. You have to make sure your stuff is formatted. Okay, we are going to talk about settings now and what settings to use for each time lapse. So an interval is the length of time between when each photo is taken. An easy way to remember this is if you want a slower time lapse, 1 second, 2 seconds, and 3 seconds is a good speed to get that slow moving time lapse. And anything faster like 5 seconds, 7 seconds, 8 seconds will make your time lapse result super fast because you're taking less photos. There's lots of YouTube videos about this. You can Google it and get a better understanding about interval shooting. Hey guys, this is just a quick note. I forgot to mention in the previous video, your formatting for your images needs to be in RAW file formatting, not JPEG. So please make sure to change your settings and select RAW file image, not JPEG. The next thing that you want to consider is the mode that you're going to be shooting in. Are you going to be shooting in manual mode or aperture priority? I think for beginners, aperture priority is probably the best option to use when starting off, because you're not fiddling too much with your camera settings when you're in manual mode, trying to get the right settings during each time and then changing it and bumping your camera and knocking it, and then there's camera shake in each shot. So putting it on aperture priority is your best bet, and that way the shutter speed will change itself as the light changes throughout your time lapse. I use aperture priority a lot. It's just convenient. Manual mode, I would say, is very good when you're trying to shoot the night sky, and that is a whole other type of time lapse and settings that you need to implement when you're taking time lapses of the night sky. Today we're just doing during the day, so it's a lot easier. But with manual mode, you want to make sure your settings stay consistent, and then in that case you would need an intervalometer to adjust it so you're not fiddling with your camera and then you get camera shake in between shots. Other important thing is to obviously change your white balance depending on the time of day you're shooting. If there's clouds, if it's sunny, I like to keep it on daylight. So this is a side note, but when I decided to come out to the spots, the clouds were looking really awesome. There was these big fluffy clouds, and I thought this would be a great spot to capture the moving clouds. But of course, as we get here, all the lovely clouds have gone over the foothills, and we're left with clear skies and pretty much no nice clouds. So in your A7 IV, it could also apply with the newer versions if you have the newer layout on your screen. I have created a shortcut to turn on my interval shooting. But if you don't know where that is, I would suggest creating a shortcut firstly. But you can go into your menu settings. If you go to the camera icon, and then you go down to drive mode and interval shooting function, you can turn it on there. You'll see there are other options in this. So you have the shooting time, shooting interval, and number of shots. And those are the three that you're going to look at when you're taking a time lapse. In this case, clouds are moving kind of slow. And there were nicer clouds earlier, so we're just gonna work with what we have. But I think because the clouds are moving so slowly, I think I'm gonna put the interval on 3 seconds and see what that does. So the shooting start time is just how many seconds after you press go will the camera take the photo. So I would suggest putting that on 2 to 5 seconds, because there's always some kind of shake once you put it on the tripod, and you don't want camera shake when you're taking a time lapse. So I have it set to 2 seconds. I think that's a good starting point. Sorry guys, it got a little chilly and I had to put my jacket back on because it's cold. But I was talking about the number of shots. So I have this set to 9,999 because I made a terrible mistake of setting it to 450 shots when I was capturing the Aurora Borealis. And I wasn't at my camera, I had set it further down. And as the aurora was blowing up and we had this beautiful show, I was so excited. I was like, oh, this is amazing. A little while later, I decided to go look at my camera, and it had stopped shooting because it was done taking the 450 photos. And I was so upset because I missed that like peak when it blew up. So I had to learn that the hard way. The next thing you want to do is you're going to put your lens in manual mode. Okay. You want it to be in manual mode, not aperture priority, because you don't want it to autofocus while you're trying to take a time lapse. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my composition. I want to get downtown Boise in the frame, and also the trail of Camel's Back. You can see it down there. Next thing you want to do is you are going to focus on a subject. In this case, I'm going to focus on the buildings. Okay, so I like to have my aperture at f11 when I'm capturing landscapes, because I want to get as much detail as possible throughout the landscape. But I think between, 5.6 and 11 is good for landscapes during the day. Of course, at nighttime, it's a completely different thing. So we're going to keep it at f11. I've got my ND filter on, so I'm just going to adjust this because I don't need the shutter speed to be super fast. My ISO is on 100 because it is daytime. So again, I don't need to do anything with that. I did write a full blog explaining all of this information on my website. I will link it down below if you want to give it a read. It's very lengthy, so take your time and go through all of the gear settings that I use, and it'll explain everything for you. I will be posting a separate video on the editing and post-processing of the time lapse, because this is going to be really long, so keep a lookout for that. If it's not already posted, I will also link that down below. But hopefully this helps. If you guys have any questions, please leave comments, and thanks again for watching this video.